Good evening. Welcome everybody to the Autonomous Collective. This is the After Hours show. Glad you could join us. I'd like to turn off the sound. That was number one on the checklist. Good evening, Anne. We'll sort this out. One of these things. I'm Joe in Norway. I'll be your host this evening and be doing the cooking this evening. I'm joined by Professor Anne Lee. She's a retired college professor and community member at the Daily Coast. She's a member of the National Council on Independent Scholars and a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. Evening, Anne. How's it going?
It's good. Been a busy week.
I was going to say, I thought it was quite quiet.
Oh, indeed. Well,
fall
probably
is
on your
almost
side of
kicking
the
in.
ocean. Yeah, on your side of the ocean. This side of the ocean got pretty wacky.
Oh, I think there might have been a few things going on this side of the pond.
Yeah.
Some tall windows were open. But speaking about getting busy, well, why don't we go over what we've got scheduled instead of me just jumping right into it. So that was Steve K, Canada, leading us into the show with some music. Steve, I'll be putting my long knives away and just making a simple porridge. Maybe not so simple, but doing some experimental porridge with something I foraged from the forest. And Anne will be giving us 30-foot view on the report on Ukraine and expounding on some other possibly important subjects, maybe a little rant. And then we'll cover some things that have been going on in the community, what will be coming up next week. But what we could discuss right now is this evening's menu. So it's harvest season all around, and we've got berries all over the place. I have picked some, let's see, what are they called? Vaccinium victus idea, or mountain cranberries, otherwise known as lingonberries. So I'll be making, they do resemble in flavor cranberries, just miniature little cranberries. And I have some white corn polenta that I'll be making porridge with. I'm going to make a hot pink porridge, and we'll be dressing it up in maybe we've got some oat milk here with some matcha green tea powder. So I'll make a little creme anglaise with green tea, and then maybe some ground pistachios, and we'll be mixing the porridge with the cranberries or the lingonberries, but I'll also be making a jelly out of this, so we'll have that as also a garnish at the end. And I might be doing a little canning. I've got a lot left over, but I think we could let you get started, Anne, with the report on Ukraine. It's been a few things happening.
Busy week there too. It only a couple days ago, Prigozhin was supposedly killed. Some of us have other interpretations of it, although the U.S. and the Brits say that Prigozhin, the head of or the founder, whatever, of the Wagner professional military corporation, private military corporation in Russia was killed in a flight from Moscow to St. Petersburg. Apparently, the plane fell out of the sky. The current story, there are many sort of framing stories, but because intelligence cannot find a trail of any kind of surface to air missile hitting the plane. It's an Embraer 600. It's a private. Well, it's a jet that most of us are experienced with. It's a twin-engined sort of regional commuter plane that you'll see on American airports. So anyway, there were two of them. The Wagner people have two of them, and usually two of them make this particular kind of flight. They fly from between the headquarters in St. Petersburg and Moscow for a variety of reasons. Now, if you remember the story, Wagner is being disassembled by the Russians. The assets, the military assets, going to the regular Russian military, the Ministry of Defense, but and used in Ukraine primarily. But apparently, and the story goes currently, that Prigozhin, after his attempt to make a march, so to speak, a mutinous march from the southern Ukrainian battle area through Rostov-on-Don up to about 120 kilometers, 180 kilometers to Moscow. And one could say that he was hoping other dissident military groups to join him, and no one did. And essentially, lots of scrambling went on, involving the country of Belarus and the widespread, far-flung assets of Wagner in Africa, which I think Prigozhin wanted to keep. But as we know from the story, and Vladimir Putin's condolences, saying that, Prigozhin was a good guy, but he made some mistakes. That's kind of the synopsis of the current statement, official statement by Putin about this terrible air tragedy, and where the plane came apart in mid-flight, and pieces came scattering to the ground, the wing landing several miles away from the final collision or impact point, which killed everyone on board. 10 people on toto, 3 crew and 7 members, a couple of bodyguards, and some of the primary folks in Wagner. So essentially a decapitation operation on this particular private military corporation. We'll see whether everything else gets absorbed by the Russian state or some other kind of private entity. Wagner is not the only private military corporation on the ground in Ukraine, but this is the one that was seemed most prominent, and with one especially with the war criminal at the head, and responsible for a variety of atrocities in during this war, which is now on day 548. A lot of days.
May I ask you a question about how they verified that everybody was killed on board? And do they know what caused it? If they didn't find a missile or any other debris, how do they know what actually took it down? Was it a bomb on board, most likely? Or?
The current story is that saboteurs of some kind put a explosive device in the landing gear compartment.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently, it's done at the last minute and nobody noticed, and either before or after probably after the pilot did a check of the aircraft. So the the Russians are waving their arms and saying they're checking everybody who is in the hangar and all the service personnel and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, of course, Putin's not sorry that Prigozhin is gone, and essentially they've dismantled and and dissolved the military group. As I said, there are other paramilitary, private military corporations in Russia on the battlefield, and they haven't gotten quite as much attention. And this one is a pretty spectacular way to go, considering that like a good security would have two planes, but whoever chose to put the bomb in the plane picked the right plane for whatever X number of reasons, killing some innocent folks, I'm sure, as well as the leadership of Wagner. Now, the bodies are apparently pretty mangled and burnt, but I think they're doing, DNA, et cetera. So perhaps we will have reality. On the other hand, there's ambiguity. There's a variety of disinformation, and Russia is the land of disinformation. So lots of other stories at work here. Although, I think if they were really doing disinformation and they would blame Ukraine, they're not blaming Ukraine. And I think Putin wants to demonstrate that if you, whatever it is, if you aim to kill the boss, do not miss. And we'll see what the real story is. It'll be an interesting report, clearly all done by the Russians and with very little, verification by. I don't know if there's any American participation or international participation in investigating a air tragedy like this. Undoubtedly, the plane has a black box, so that will be kind of interesting to see whether any of that ever sees the light of day.
This broke up over Russian territory, or
yes, northwest of St. Petersburg, or southwest of it. Yeah, there's lots of the conspiracy theories include, why was the transponder off for about a month and then suddenly goes on to track this one plane. So that's kind of interesting. So you have some interesting public reporting on what was going on with this, what one assumes is a sort of routine flight, although nothing is routine considering the post-mutiny period. So that's kind of the big deal, and they're still yakking about this. Undoubtedly, the Russians will do whatever they're going to do in terms of showing where the pieces of the plane and perhaps showing where the bomb was. That would be probably their biggest deal. The claim is that the explosion was sufficient to destabilize the plane and rip one wing off. On the left wing, so to speak, as I recall from the images.
Before you go further, may I give a little porridge update here? I should probably describe a little bit what I'll be doing while you're speaking. So I've set to make the berry conserves, and I have the polenta here, which takes about 40-50 minutes to cook, but I'm lazy. I have soaked. This is a porridge tip number one. Before you go to bed, soak your rice. If you've got leftover rice, soak it in water before you go to bed. Then you have got rice porridge in the morning, or your oats. Put a couple of oats in your pan, or cream of wheat, semolina, or in this case, cornmeal. So I've got the soaked polenta here, so it'll take less time to cook. So we get started. So I'll first be making the jam and the porridge, and then we'll combine them and go from there. That's it. Cool. Thanks.
Looks yummy. You said it was experimental. I hope there aren't any experimental bears around who want porridge. Anyway.
Got a few black ones furthermore.
Indeed. In my town, the black ones come all the way down to Main Street. But anyway, back to the more symbolic bear of Russia, Prigozhin. He made serious mistakes, and that's kind of what happens when you cross the boss. Fortunately, there were advances by, and it looks like there are some reasonable tactical advances going on in the south of Ukraine. It's an area that's beginning to give way. The reports vary, but apparently the Ukrainians are past the first line of the Russian defense. It has 3 layers, and there have been some issues, morale issues on the Russian side, a variety of other things that it's stuff's happening every day. The initial assault was described by some folks. There's some video that it was all done at night with night vision, and that the Russians are not as well equipped as the Ukrainians with night vision equipment. So therefore, some advantages have come from military action combat at night. The rest is sort of disinformation. You have the information space trying to reconsolidate Russia's position after this Prigozhin business, noting, of course, that he had something like 40,000 troops, and one has to assume that some folks actually regret that, the paycheck is going to be gone, and maybe even a personal loyalty at some moment to Prigozhin. Although a guy who has people killed with sledgehammers, I suppose, has a really weird sense of what counts as loyalty. So I think the second line of defense is somewhere in the Robotyne area or Robotyne in western Zaporizhzhia Oblast. And there is a kind of widening that is occurring there, but we'll see further because it's a very long line. The second line of defense is a little bit more well built up, with hardened sites, as well as a lot of mines. There's still a lot of those million mines aren't going to kind of all explode at once. So that's a kind of important issue that's going on there. The forces are proceeding forward in 2 sectors. For some reason, Putin made a rare visit to the Southern Military District headquarters at Rostov on Don a couple of days ago. This was the location that surrendered to the Wagner forces, and so Putin is sort of trying to reconsolidate, I think, what are the lines of force and communication. The operation in Ukraine is still being led by General Valery Gerasimov. So all those things that Prigozhin was hoping to get, like getting rid of Gerasimov, have just not happened. So much of the same things occurred. There was, you could say, there was a slight diminishing in terms of battles and casualties. So the Russian casualty number reported by the Ukrainians is below 500 for yesterday, and we'll see whether that picks up as we approach the weekend. So the one area of main kind of attack is in this line that goes in the eastern side of Zaporizhzhia, or the oblast, the edge between Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia. It's the control of terrain remains pretty much the same, and it doesn't look like much progress has occurred, but there's a significant little area that has been geolocated on August 24th, and that Ukrainian forces did advance southeast of Robotyn, and Tina. And the issue from August 24th with this advance has been some description about some of the reporting has included a variety of artillery barrages, first from the Ukrainians, then from the Russians. So it's not quite as stable as one might think, but they have driven further. Some say anywhere between 8 to 10 kilometers forward. So that may not seem like a big amount, but it's a fairly big amount relative to the average daily advance in the region. Your mileage may vary, but this is an area that's fairly wide, probably about a 20-kilometer at its widest point, and narrowing down in a kind of triangle. And they're still not to Tokmak, which is where they're trying to get to, or what they think they're trying to get to. And if you look at various views of the area being attacked, it's a fairly wide front. As I said, the greatest width is about 20 kilometers. It's more about a 10-kilometer wide front that is moving forward towards Kherson, towards Melitopol, which is the other thing there. It is problematic, but you know, we try and figure out where things are changing, and it still continues. Probably one of the biggest or most important things, at least for the stuff that I've been trying to get out there, is to get people to look back at the history of these kinds of disputes, because it has been always this kind of fight between Russian and European or EU influence. And this is not a recent thing. This goes back, well, decades, and is incredibly problematized depending on the internal politics of the Ukraine, of the Ukraine as it becomes Ukraine. And so the EU trade agreements, all of these things are incredibly problematized, and in fact, likely made a greater sense of where the Ukrainian people, and polling says this, it's up in the 90% who like the country the way it is. I mean, in the sense of not being reassimilated. So that's Ukrainian polling, and it would be interesting to actually get a little bit something more impartial. But I would assert that the majority of folks, you don't have a lot of insurgency going on, or at least none reported. And there was a little bit during the beginning of the invasion, but there's a lot less now, and so I think there's a lot of consolidation. There's been cleaning house in various sectors of the Ukrainian administration, including the military. So some folks lost jobs because they were perhaps a little soft on their loyalty relative to Ukraine versus Russia. Also, some insurgency at that level, but nothing major. I think they've spent a lot of time trying to work through that. The intelligence services on the Ukrainian side, but that's the way the story is now. It's an interesting story, and if you want to get a little bit more of where we're headed on this in the daily reporting, I put something out at around midnight Eastern time that updates the current assessed control of terrain maps with some subsidiary information, often reporting from both Western, Ukrainian, EU, and Russian sources, try to reduce the amount of Russian disinformation, but there's still plenty there, and plenty of controversy relative to, for example, some Russian military bloggers kind of like Prigozhin, and Prigozhin is was a favorite of some of them. So this is a slightly problematic, but I think they tried to overcompensate for that by what was sort of a continuing advance on the northern part of the eastern edge of the battle zone of the line of the line of control, and we may see some more advances there. It was in some ways to overcompensate before the mutiny. So that's pretty much where things are. The earlier part of the week was to identify the promises that have now been made that include the Netherlands and Norway in terms of providing F-16s for the Ukrainian army or the Ukrainian armed forces. What's interesting, of course, is that Ukrainian pilots have actually been training on the F-16 for several months now. They say that what you need is 6 months of training. I think there's been a little bit of a rush on that, but they say that they've already been training for 3 months on these things. So we'll soon see. I think there's probably a lot of truth somewhere in between, because there are plenty of places in NATO to train people on the F-16. There's a lot of different training facilities, aside from the ones in the US, of course, and an intermediate company that is handling it. And of course, we can ask questions about how much is this costing people and a variety of other things, but we'll probably not know for a variety of reasons. But the same company that does the aggressor air force, the aggressor airplanes for the training that the United States does in Nevada, is sort of handling the interchange of some of these and maintenance in some ways of some of these F-16 transfers. So there's a little bit of something else going on, but that needs a lot more reporting. I would hope that anyone listening to me would begin to be aware of those kinds of things, that it's not simply a military transfer of equipment. And so that has other issues as well. And for a variety of reasons, you can make all your own stories up about that. Now, my rant today is those darn space lasers are back. Those Jewish space lasers are back because with every natural disaster in the United States, and it's unfortunate that mainstream media and social media, insurgent social media, we might refer to some of it, bots and trolls and all those folks, have been creating disinformation around what I was talking about last week, and that was the fires and the awful fires in Maui. Now, the claim is it's just, some of them are just, one would say ignorant, but amusing from a kind of thinking about this in ways that have, no roots in reality, but an actual, that it's quite possible to show cars and buildings badly damaged near trees and poles that remain standing. But the claim is that these scenes from the Maui wildfires, and even the word wildfire is problematic for some people, show cars and buildings badly damaged near trees and poles that remain standing, suggesting that a wildfire wasn't the cause. Now, this is clearly disinformation. The Associated Press assess it as being false. So, such observations from the fires on the Hawaiian island are not unusual, experts say. Wildfires often spew fiery embers that hit larger targets like homes and cars. The Paradise Fire in California did have some of those kinds of elements. Trees that catch fire are typically not completely vaporized, in part because of their water content. This is why you still get, old trees that were burnt in fires, but that still continue to grow. And then you can tell, by taking a cross section, looking at the rings, what happened. But anyway, the real facts, of course.
And have you been listening to InfoWars?
No. Oh, I haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. No, I haven't actually. Even though Alex Jones's presence with what's his name, Kenneth Cheesebro, on January 6th has become kind of interesting in terms of Alex Jones's own role in the insurrection. But no.
Quick update on the porridge. We're almost finished. So got a nice hot pinkish porridge from the juice from the titibak, the lingonberries. Got the syrup as well. So what I'm going to do now is plate the porridge into some greased ramekins. I've got some pre-frozen in the oven. I'm going to try to quick chill them, and then I'll make a sauce for it. It's nearly done. What we're going to do next. So back to the Jewish space lasers.
I'm now hungry for something either kosher or non-kosher. Darn those experimental bears. So the fact, of course, of this that the Associated Press was trying to handle, fact checking has become ever more important in an age of massive or broad scale disinformation. So the facts are, amid the devastating wildfires, some social media users are advancing claims that visuals of the aftermath suggest a fire isn't actually to blame. Now, that's a supposition with no good empirical support, but it is always quite amusing that a firestorm might actually operate in ways that one might not expect, depending on what caught fire and where it caught fire in a hurricane force wind. But here's the quote that's being thrust at the public in Facebook. The powers to be are at work again. This was no wildfire, a voiceover on one Facebook video states, showing pictures of Maui wreckage. A wildfire that demolishes buildings, leaving trees standing, leaving restaurant umbrellas and trees untouched, yet having the power to destroy a boat in the middle of the ocean. What we are seeing here is definitely no wildfire. Wildfires do not completely burn out vehicles, glass and all, yet leaving nearby trees and utility poles still standing upright. And I won't go through the stories that I was just describing relative to correcting this sort of thing. But this is this usual kind of flurry of attention-seeking disinformation by people who just traffic in it, and it's quite weird. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about some other elements of this that have reemerged in terms and I'll use a big word here, but it's one that is fairly obvious to us. I think when you look at the devastation, you can think of the being, as it were, the existence that existed for this group of folks in a very small town on an island, that there's a kind of, as it were, social ontology that it is a environment of a variety of objects, that some standing, some not standing, like trees and poles, and other things like people being killed. The death toll is now been, the data has been consolidated, and they think with a single database that 388 people number is the number of who have been killed in this particular fire. I think the number may go up, but you can see that some working out of the different reporting services relative to FEMA, et cetera, are being sort of worked through. Federal responders in Hawaii are being targeted by social media disinformation. This is a threat to the social ontology of a natural disaster that is also human in origin. Social ontology is the study of the nature and properties of the social world. It is concerned with analyzing the various entities in the world that arise from social interaction. An eco-socialist ontology for Hawaii would study the nature and properties of Hawaii's social world as an actual world that is both mediated and assaulted by disinformation mongers who cannot stop recycling some tired falsehoods. This would be the propaganda element that seeks to obscure the real social and ecological relations, such as with the various corporations that I talked about last week, and the large-scale landowners in Hawaii, especially in places like Maui, or whole islands that have been bought by Larry Ellison, for example. Disinformation remains a dangerous commodity form in this environment, and the social media still is very important. It allows some people to remain in contact, and it's unfortunate, but all that information is being combined to begin to identify the true toll, the human toll, much less all of the other awfulness of this story. But all of these things need to be accounted for. Hawaiian TikTokers are urging tourists not to visit Maui following these devastating wildfires. There's I suppose a lot of rubblenecking, as they say, when these disasters occur, and I think that people would do well to leave Maui alone. Certainly a lot of other Hawaii, the rest of the archipelago, to visit. The creators are saying that resources on the island need to be reserved for local people. That is the real environment. That is the people who actually live on Maui rather than visit it. Tourists currently in Maui are being accused of insensitive behavior towards local people. I don't know, you can read for yourself some of these issues, but it is the case that hotels and other kinds of facilities are being used to house people who are in effect refugees. And the federal government has gone in, everyone got $700 to cover kinds of all of these kinds of problematic issues about being displaced. And it's unfortunate, but I think tourists sort of get in the way of trying to work through that. And so we now return to the unfortunate rumor mongering and disinformation produced by right-wing nut jobs. The current one is the return by the boyfriend of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who runs the live streaming service that covers Trump's rallies. So that's why they're kind of together, I suppose. And both going to the same places. Anyway, they've regurgitated the image that was taken in May of 2018 of the launch of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, that is Elon Musk's company's SpaceX, in California at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Now, this is a 2018 picture of a takeoff, but if you aren't thinking about it without any context, and you think about the kind of images that we often get about what a space laser might do, you could claim that that's what it is. Although, well, anyway, I digress. I remind you, of course, about social ontology, and it's about studying, nature and the properties of the social world, and they all interrelate that kind of way. They have different kinds of questions that come from this. How is it that our attitudes set up our understanding of this kind of environment? What are the causal patterns and the kind of language that we use? And these are all sort of socially constructed. And we can see that there are social and non-social things going at it when you have a natural disaster like this. The horrible things that you have to run into the water to get away from the flames because you have no other way of exiting. those kinds of things. Well, anyway, they're back because Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend suggests that the wildfires were intentionally set. Those Jewish space lasers, I don't know, they're kind of there. The boyfriend is named Brian Glenn, and they took to Twitter to suggest that recent wildfires may have been intentionally set in the name of saving the planet. In right-wing circles, conspiracy theorists are blaming the Hawaii wildfires on space lasers and suggest it's part of a globalist plot to buy the land and traffic children. Remember, this is a continuing QAnon saw about children, and of course the globalist plot about whatever, some new world order or something. Needless to say, in the thing that I put out on Daily Coast that will appear at about 8:30 tonight, Eastern time, it'll include the original diatribe that Marjorie Taylor Greene gave us several years ago about the Jewish space lasers. And the fact is, they still don't exist, but it is amazing to see how images and videos showing the wreckage on Maui are how they spread on social media, but not all of them are accurate. And, it's unfortunate that typical with breaking news events or natural disasters, some users share unrelated photos, and videos to amplify or spread conspiracy theories that wildfires do not have a natural cause. Now, it is true that in squid farming and a variety of other things, they're intentionally set fires, and arson does exist. But I would assert that I think we have enough information to show that that was not the case. And the claim, of course, is that images show a directed energy weapon beam that caused the fires. There is just no evidence of the actual thing. And but people will circulate the image and say, "Can you confirm this?" Blah blah blah. And some other images like this are framed by the proposition that the claim that there might be some sort of directed energy weapon out being used. So it's all, I don't think anyone would spend that amount of money anyway, even if they had a laser that was that powerful. Seems to me, if you're going to blame arson, it's likely that there could have been people running around with cans of gasoline and matches. That's probably pretty much the extent of it, rather than this kind of elaborate, weird story about using dated images. Anyway, is this
kind of information going out in the mainstream, being broadcast by Fox, I assume?
No, but they are in. It's being debunked anyway by some like Associated Press and Deutsche Welle. So that's good. And they also mentioned that this happened before during the 2020-21 California wildfires. This is probably one of the instances where you can use that rocket launch image to claim that it was a energy beam. That's because it's on the edge of water of the ocean, so it looks like it could be Hawaii. This is where framing the message works for disinformation. Of course, it's a still image, and there's no video of it. I mean, the thing when you test something like this is to see if there's other corroborating images, etc. And you have to look at metadata and blah blah blah. But it's sort of interesting. And yet, there are websites that circulate such lies. There's one that was done on August 20th that says, quote unquote, Marines neutralize fleeing FEMA convoy in Maui. Now, you know, this goes back to Katrina. I mean, in terms of being afraid of FEMA, of
This
demonizing
is
or
FEMA
weaponizing.
camps.
Yes, FEMA camps is the same stuff. And so this guy on Real Raw News, it's owned and operated by Michael Baxter, a former mainstream journalist and former English teacher. And he says that I delete all trollish email without reading them. Real Raw News has many fabricated stories debunked by the AFP. You see, I think all the mainstream services are now beginning to take on this fact-checking stuff. This Real Raw News was baseless allegations of arrests and COVID-19 conspiracy theories. You know, it's all kinds of things. They try and disclaim it by saying our website contains humor, parody, and satire. Anyway, and in January 2021, Media Monitor NewsGuard, which is also problematic for its own reasons, reviewed Real Raw News and found stories on the site generally promote conspiracy theories and other debunked claims, including about U.S. politics. So it may be a minor little website, but as you know, they get continually come back into the news because of this disinformation stuff. If you wanted a kind of clue to it, it uses a Christian-based crowdfunder. I don't know why Christian-based crowdfunders are different, but anyway, that's what it uses. So another story in a slightly more reputable media outlet wrote about rumors and conspiracy theories. Authorities try to stamp out Maui wildfire disinformation. Government officials are blasting social media posts that they say are spreading misinformation about the Maui wildfires, particularly the blaze in Lahaina that is so far claimed, as reported then, was 111, now up to 388. Do not rely on people who fancy themselves as influencers, Governor Josh Green said at a briefing on Wednesday. There have been posts speculating about the cause of the fire and also claims that federal emergency agencies can't be trusted. You have people who have predators on social media. We know that for a fact. We have people who want to spread negativity, the governor said. And so, for example, one post claimed that FEMA was confiscating shipping containers loaded with supplies from Maui. You know, there's just, it's just not true. But note that this is the same range of disinformation that does occur in these kinds of large-scale disasters. Now, to what aim? It also it creates a kind of unstable environment, that media environment that allows folks like some people are just more mistrustful, they're more unsure, and more specifically, the victims may fall to appeals to do certain things about their property that they probably shouldn't be doing so quickly. And at least for the most part, federal folks are, and even local disaster assistance tries not to play with these kinds of things. Another FEMA post tries to debunk a rumor that people who apply for federal assistance could have their property confiscated. Now, who's trying to foment that, right? A kind of anti-government sort of. So now on to the space lasers. These, what we're seeing after the Maui fire has been very similar to what we've seen after a number of disasters, man-made or otherwise, which is an attempt to blame a secret cabal for creating terrible conditions in order to usher in a new world order. My God. This is Mike Breen speaking. He's the chief executive officer of the anti-extremism organization Human Rights First. These theories have had devastating real-world impacts, that had a great replacement theory motivation as part of the background against that. The experts say that the spread of such theories can be attributed to the algorithms central to tech platforms, which prioritize content that receives more engagement. In other words, people who get more agitated when they receive greater attention relative to this information, despite the fact that it is false. We know companies like Meta away the most important material on the platforms based on engagement, which often tends to be either vitriolic content, conspiratorial content, or something that's controversial, said Katie Paul, director of the nonprofit tech watchdog, the Tech Transparency Project, or TTP. After disasters, when there's a lot of online content related to a particular event, these mechanisms help to amplify some of that harmful content above more authoritative sources. And, and sometimes it's not deliberate, it's just inadvertent. That is, search functions on Facebook or Instagram will autocomplete certain terms with conspiracy theories. So, for example, if you look up World Economic Forum, you get results for World Evil Forum that include conspiracy theories that come back in the search. So you have to sort of, be very aware that these small differences in either spelling or construction or lexical inclusion are going to create problems when you search for terms. This is a typical problem, one played at by a variety of trolls, phishing operations, a whole variety of other kinds of information security problems are created by this kind
Indeed.
of activity.
It's in
Yes.
the development world, you can have supply chain issues of people relying on third-party software, open source.
Yes.
And you could get some developer downloading what they think is the correct library, but will be, they do a typo, or a typo, a library has been uploaded that resembles a certain type of library name, and that developer will think that mistakenly that this is the one that they require in their project, will download it, and then their program will become infected. And that can happen all through the chain.
You've set up your food. Do you want to talk a little bit about it? Is it cool enough to taste?
We're about ready. The porridge has set, so hopefully it'll come right out. I've got, hopefully, baby, come on, baby. I need some help. Oh, did I lose you? Yeah.
Do we need sound effects for this?
Oh.
There we go.
How's that?
Nice.
Nice gelatinous texture.
Yum. A miniature blancmange, sort of.
Should we do? The preserves. See everything here.
Now I'm hungry again. Damn it.
Oh, that looks a bit messy. Okay. Wow.
Nice.
Lingonberry porridge with green tea from Anglaise. Crumbled pistachio.
Well, that's not disinformation. That looks yummy.
Hey kids, come and get it. It does require a bit of heavy hand with the sugar because the lingonberry are so tart, and the bitterness of the green tea. I probably put way too much green tea in there, but
Nice. So nice. We should remind folks about what else is being offered on the site. After September 1st, I'm going to be here every day. I'm here every day anyway, but I'm going to probably take an hour, perhaps somewhere around the 6 o'clock hour, to talk about a variety of topics, some of which have already been scheduled in anyway. And so I figured I'd just do it as a regular theme. In other events that I'm participating in, we're showing the Peter Watkins 5 and 3/4 hour long film on the Paris Commune. Don't worry, we're not looking at it all at once. We're looking at it sort of an hour at a time, and it's a kind of interesting little document if you know a little bit of the history of the Civil War in France after the Franco-Prussian War. I know no one cares about that, but really so many ideas about whether it's Occupy Wall Street or street battles in France that occur now have their traditions built into this other way of thinking about the city of Paris. So hopefully you'll come by and take a look at that. We have other things this weekend. Weekly Marks will be here as usual. You should stop by our website to look at our scheduling and join us on Discord. We talk about all kinds of things, not necessarily super crazy leftist stuff. Occasionally, we'll talk about disinformation like I just did, because we all do keep our eye on what Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing simply for self-defense, if nothing else.
Yeah, just to add on to the schedule there, we've got writers workshop on Mondays at 7 p.m. Before that, we have a Bring the News, where people can bring articles that they thought were interesting and would like to open it up for discussion. So we read the news and have a discussion afterwards. And then on Tuesday, we've got the Red Hour. This week, it's another reading group. In honor of Ray Bradbury's 103rd birthday, we'll be reading an essay he wrote about Fahrenheit 451. And on Wednesdays, there's Texas Tom's Spirituality and Activism. I believe you have one more Thursday, Marks, on Brad DeLong's Slouching Towards Utopia. Is that right?
That's correct. I'll be discussing some other things perhaps in the future, or combine them with Brad DeLong's Slouching Through Utopia. On Sundays, we've been looking at John Bellamy Foster's Return of Nature.
And I'll be opening up booking for anyone interested to do their own hour throughout the week. You can book that. You can find the links in the Discord. And if you're interested in joining us, you can go to the autonomouscollective.net. You'll find all the information you need there.
Come on down.
Well, Ann, I've got breakfast to eat. Thank you all. Take care, everyone. See you next week.
See you next week.